What's up and welcome back to Earl Knows It All, man. And as promised, we're going to get into the college football playoff, all of the possible scenarios that could go on, man. Now, the playoff rankings came out last night. Right now, you saw Ohio State, who lost to Michigan, fall down to number 6. Right now, you got FSU as the number 4 team. We got college football championship week, so the picture will be very clear after this because the selection committee will make their picks for who will make the playoffs, the 4 teams. Now, right now, the SEC championship game, to me, in my opinion, is actually the default or de facto national championship game. It has been for a while, man. The last couple of years, the Georgia Bulldogs, of course, have won the national championship. If you've been watching, you understand and know that, of course, I'm a Georgia Bulldogs fan. So my prediction is that the Georgia Bulldogs will win the SEC championship. And unfortunately, that is going to knock Alabama out of contention to be in this playoff. But rest assured, Alabama, I think this definitely will be the toughest game of the season for the Bulldogs, of course. Probably even tougher than the 2 playoff games that they'll play after this game, after they win. So, like I said, I feel like this is the de facto national championship game. A lot of times it is. You've seen Alabama have some dominance and be involved in this thing and win and go on to win championships. You've seen Georgia do that last year. And, of course, 2 years ago, they lost in the SEC championship game to the Alabama Crimson Tide and came back and met them in the national championship game and won that game. So it's interesting, man, to see what happens here. The big thing here is what happens if Alabama wins, because this kind of causes the chaos that I spoke about earlier. Alabama right now is a team that is in striking distance to make the playoffs. Of course, the SEC is, known as one of the best conferences in college football, if not the best. Maybe the Pac-12 is better than them this year, but yeah, for that reputation of having that best conference and always been a team that has pulled out the national championship trophy in the end and hosted up, I think could help them if they are able to pull off the upset and beat the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, a lot of people say, hey, you got the Texas Longhorns who went to Tuscaloosa earlier this year and beat Alabama, and right now are ranked ahead of them. What would you do with Texas at that point? This is the interesting thing. This is where things get interesting. Texas is also in the Big 12 championship game this week. They get Oklahoma State in that championship game. Now, we're expecting that Texas should win that game. They beat Alabama. Is that enough of a resume for Texas to be the team that says, hey, we should be in this thing? And the reason that it gets a little murky is because Florida State is undefeated, but they lost their star quarterback, Jordan Travis, 2 weeks ago with a broken leg, and he's out. So you got an unproven quarterback that's playing, and they're not the same team, obviously, that they were before. Now, they went on to beat Florida, of course, and, were able to punch their ticket, remain undefeated. They're still ranked 4th right now. You got them in the mix with Alabama. If they win, jump over them. Now, the way the committee says that they pick this thing is based on who they think the best team is. Sometimes they weight the conference championships a little bit higher. Sometimes it's the eye test. Sometimes it's head-to-head. It just really depends on what the committee wants to go with. Now, that can seem like a crock to a lot of people, but I kind of agree with that, man. If you're looking at this and you watched all of these teams, you kind of want to be able to say, okay, who are the 4 best teams? That's what we should be looking for at the end of the year. Not necessarily who has the 4 best resumes, but who do we think are the 4 best teams? Now, I do think you have to consider head-to-head, of course, because why are we playing the games if, the head-to-head doesn't matter? But losing a game in week 2 of the season is a little bit different than, where we are right now. Texas, I don't think is the same team that they were then, and Alabama isn't the same team. Milroe, their quarterback, Jalen Milroe, has been much better since that game against Texas. He's kind of found his footing as well. So that's an interesting head-to-head thing to look at. Now, Oregon has lost 1 game all season. They lost to Washington in Washington. Washington's undefeated. They're currently ranked 3rd right now behind Michigan. And what do we do with that? Do we say, hey, if Oregon beats Washington this time on a neutral field, both of these teams will beat each other head-to-head? Oregon is the Pac-12 championship, maybe what a lot of people feel is the best conference in football this year. do we put Oregon in? And Washington will be saying, hey, we beat them too, so we're 1-1. Why aren't we in this? We're a one-loss team. We got a better resume. We beat a team that's a conference champion and a team that you're putting into the playoff if Oregon makes it at that point. Why wouldn't we be considered over Texas or over Alabama at that point? So it just really kind of leads to chaos if that happens. Now, Michigan and the Big Ten will take on Iowa. If Michigan loses, all bets are off at that point, I think, for the Big Ten. I don't think they'll get a team in. On the outside looking in, Ohio State is saying, hey, we lost the big game to Michigan, but we beat Notre Dame. We won some big games this year. We went on the road to win that game. We've scheduled pretty tough. Why can't we get a chance at it? I think Ohio State as the one-loss team is definitely out of this thing, in my opinion. They won't. There's no scenario, in my opinion, that makes them get in. Some people say Alabama as a one-loss team doesn't have a chance. Even if they win this game and beat Georgia, I beg to differ with that. My personal opinion, I'm a little bit biased because I'm an SEC guy. I like Alabama. My dad is from Alabama. I got family in Alabama, a lot of Crimson Tide fans. And I grew up watching them as well as Georgia. And I'm a Georgia fan. So I think if Alabama does happen to beat Georgia, you put both of those teams in because I think, to me, honestly, they're the two best teams in college football. I think you have to reward Michigan for the season they've had, even though Harbaugh has been out for several games. And if they win the Big Ten, you put them in. And then my fourth team, if we're looking at those three, I'm sorry, Texas, it has to be the Pac-12 champion. Well, let me put it this way. If Washington wins that, and I'll say regardless, it's a Pac-12 champion. That's what I'll say. I'll stand on that. Because if Washington wins, they're undefeated. They're the Pac-12 champion. They've beaten Oregon twice. No one else has a victory like that, essentially. So you put Washington in as the fourth team. Now, if Oregon wins, Oregon's look like, besides Georgia, the best team in football, the most consistent team. They lost a close game on the road in Washington against a tough team that's ranked third in the country right now. So you can't necessarily hold that against them. So I think you would have to put Oregon in. And I know it's not fair. I know Texas fans are probably saying, hey, how the heck could you leave us out if we beat Alabama in that particular kind of scenario? But that would be what I would do, man. I'm not the committee, of course. So maybe they look at it and say, hey, Texas will get in over Alabama. Or I don't see any scenario where the two-time defending champion Georgia Bulldogs don't make it to the playoff. Even if they lose to Alabama, they would have to lose, 50-0, and Carson Beck will have to get injured. And for some reason, Kirby Smart wouldn't be available for the playoffs, or something like that would have to happen for Georgia not to make it. If Georgia loses a tight game or loses by a touchdown, or even 2 touchdowns to Alabama, it could very well happen. I think you still put them in the playoff because they've been the best team. They've handled every single thing. Now, I don't foresee them losing to Alabama because I don't think Alabama is the same opponent that they've been in the past against them. And their most recent matchup, they beat Alabama in the national championship game. So I think maybe they've gotten over that hump of the Alabama thing. But you guys comment below. Tell me what you think about this. If you're a college football fan, what would you do? If you were on the committee, and all of the scenarios that could play out, it could just be chalk. Could be Georgia wins, Washington wins, Texas wins, and Michigan wins. And those are our 4 teams. That very well could be it. But this thing never works like that. So I'm praying for a little bit of chaos. Not for Georgia to lose, though. But that would even be interesting because I don't think there's a way Georgia won't make it. But, it could be very fun, man. I'll say this. You guys tell me what you think. Who are the 4 teams that you got in? I'll tell you my 4 teams, the 4 best teams I think right now in college football. I think Alabama will lose, so I'm going to have to put them out. I'll go Georgia is the 1 seed, Michigan is the 2 seed, Washington is the 3, and then I'll put Texas in, handling their business against Oklahoma State, as the 4 seed and playing in the playoffs. So we get an early look at Georgia versus Texas. Texas, of course, will be coming to the SEC. That's my prediction. You guys tell me what you think. What do you think the committee should do in the event that we get a lot of these one-loss teams that kind of muck everything up, man? Comment below. Tell me what you think. And as always, like I said, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn your notifications on so you do not miss a thing.